6 Melbourne Terrafly runway heading runway 5. Clear for takeoff.
From Psychic Sundays to E.T. Contact and everything in between, this is Spaced Out Sunday's Cosmic Passport with host Elizabeth Anglin.
Check it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Having great show, guys. Smoke now.
You can connect with Elizabeth on Skype at 505-908-9558 and Spirit for Peace. Follow Liz on Twitter at Elizabeth Anglin and hashtag SpacedOutRadio. And you can connect with us on the web at spacedoutradio.com.
I feel the need for speed.
You feel it over and over again. We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again.
Chills, cool now. Smoke off now.
This is the life we live again.
Chills, ready to go now. Contact. Easing up. Chills, cool now. Really now. One left.
Don't look much like Los Angeles to me. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
Now taking you on a spiritual journey from the desert of New Mexico this Sunday night, here's Spaced Out Sunday's Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Chills, ready to get class. Contact.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. This is your host, Elizabeth Anglin, coming to you live from the desert southwest here in Madrid, New Mexico. Thanks so much for being here tonight, everybody. I am so glad you could join us for another episode of Nerdy. Elizabeth Gets Nerdy with Eric Marcum. And I am just so happy to welcome all of you listening in from North America and around the world. I want to welcome everyone listening on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on KTLK The Fringe. Thank you so much for being here and listening to us tonight. We also have a great love and appreciation for our guitar god, Ron BUMBLEFOOT THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. He creates the music that makes Spaced Out Radio Weekend rock, the official spacedoutradio.com music. And if you are on Twitter, check us out at Spaced Out Radio, or give our Facebook page a like at Spaced Out Radio. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And, of course, our website is SpacedOutRadio.com. How easy is that? If you go to Patreon.com, we have some cool offers for you, our listeners there as well. Make sure you check those out. And if you want to take part in the show tonight, we will be taking questions from the chat rooms. You'll have to sign into one of them on Spreaker. If you're on the spacedoutradio.com or you have the Spreaker app, you can sign into the chat room there, or you can go to Facebook to the SOR Space Travelers Club. And if you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR space traveler. We offer some pretty decent stuff for you, our valued listener there, and it's our opportunity to give back to you as well. Oh, and while you're at it on the website, please check out our news section, The Encounter, that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors Eric Marcum and Everett Thiemer, and you can check out Dave Scott's latest blog there as well. If you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researchers are ready to help you find out what's going on. And again, a big thanks to everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key, to the Spaced Out Radio family way down in Noonan, Georgia. Thanks for sharing your nights with us at SOR. Also, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. We are live at Sin City. And United Public Radio Network folks on 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And all of the listeners on that network from 160 countries around the world. Thank you for being here. Well, this is, again, our monthly Elizabeth Gets Nerdy with Eric Marcum, and sometimes we have other folks on as well, but tonight it's just me and Eric. And I have to tell you, I was thinking I was going to do so much studying for this scientific discussion of consciousness. What is consciousness? What is the Mandela effect? And I added, the silly me, I added this idea that we should also talk about time. And I think it's because I connect consciousness and time so togetherly in my world. And that has to do with being an experiencer and having gone through conscious experiences with aliens and having also had a lot of regressions with aliens. So I threw in time, and then I said, okay, I'll read up on all of this. And then as I was reading up on all of it, I went, I can't do all this physics right now before the show. So I'm going to go back to what I know. A lot of the things I'm going to bring up tonight will be related to experiences I've had where I've talked to aliens or aliens were talking to me about consciousness, physical matter, reality, time, and not so much the Mandela effect. I have had conversations about dimensions, but I think the dimensions they were talking about were the M-brain dimensions, although I just read an interesting thing on a Fiona Broom's website where one of her Mandela effect people was talking about hearing from their spiritual guidance that they needed to bring all timelines to one timeline. And I had a very similar thing happen with aliens where I was told to bring all times to one time. And that has something to do with consciousness. Eric Marcum, what do you think? So that the physicists do think that everything happens all at once. Could you repeat that? I had not turned off your mute. Bad me. I was in another time zone. I actually had a little Mandela effect there, people, where this was the time zone where I didn't unmute Eric. Eric, repeat it, if you would. Okay. Yeah. Well, uh-oh. Hold on a second. I can hear him. He is off mute. They're 30 seconds behind. So, yeah, I'd keep going, Eric. But no, what's interesting is I'm not getting any, you're off mute, but you're not getting anything. It is on cable. Bear with us for our slight technical difficulties here, which will end as soon as I click the right button. I'm not sure what button that will be, but it will be a button of some kind in some dimension. Interesting. We have set everything up appropriate. Eric, talk a little bit. Oh, it's not happening. No. So, you know what, folks? What I'm going to do is I'm going to call Eric right back. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk about what we just went through, which was a change in time. So, Eric, I'll be right back with you. And, you know, another thing that I wanted to do on this show tonight was to have the ability to talk about time change and changing time zones or changing frequencies. I would say that for most of us who, you know, have to go through the time change, if you're Andy or you're Robert from the SOR Speaker chat room in Australia, you're not going through this. But here in the United States, we have this crazy thing where we fall back an hour. Our time changes and we fall back an hour, and it really messes up our internal clock. And when it messes up our internal clock, we do silly things. Like, it's not a great idea to, it's not a great idea to drive tired, but it's also not a great idea to drive where, you know, your circadian clock is off. And oftentimes what's happening at this time of year is all of our clocks are off. So let's see if we could hear Eric. Eric, go ahead and talk. Not yet. Oh no, and I'm not sure why you're not getting picked up. Let me go to my tools. You know, it could also be said, don't drive a studio that is going to change your settings in Skype for you without you telling it to. Eric, talk.
I'm talking.
Yay!
Robert White says, yep, no voice, but they're on about 30-second delay.
Yeah, they're on a 30-second delay.
To paraphrase a popular commercial, can y'all hear me now?
Thanks for bearing with us, guys. So, Eric, what was it those physicists were saying?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot. No, anyway, I'd been reading about the nature of time and some other things because of my experience with Mandela effect. And what they were saying is that multiple timelines, basically everything is happening that has ever happened and is ever going to happen right now. But it's the way the human mind filters reality is why we get it, you know, slice at a time instead of just getting bombarded with everything. Well, which would, you know, that would kind of explain, like, you know, people who can get glimpses into the future, and, you know, there's almost a decent explanation for some of the psi powers.
Well, actually, you know, this goes back to, since I said what I know about is aliens, one of my first regressions it was just after February of 1991. So it was just after the beginning of the first war, not in Saudi, but, you know, we were flying from Saudi to, what's that other place? Iraq. First Iraq War.
Yeah.
And
Kuwait, Iraq, yeah.
Kuwait, Iraq. And so I started to have these experiences of consciously traveling out of my body to different areas. But what had happened in an experience with aliens is they put a big like the old hair dryers, you go to a hairstyling salon and the hair dryers would be like this big dome over a lady's head, and she'd have curlers on. Well, this was past that time of curlers, at least for me, and big dome hair dryers. But I was having an experience where they put this big light dome over my head, and in it, what they were in a sense, what they were telling me that was sort of a way of looking at the probability field, or looking at the time streams, and what they were doing is working on my brain neural pathways to be able to handle this sort of information coming across different time streams. And so it seemed like they had developed this machine to sort of parcel out different time streams, or to somehow make the now more now versus more separate in a human brain, or even in their brain. So I have this machine on my head, and they're showing me, okay, it's growing all these neural pathways. And what's the point of growing all these neural pathways? Well, the point is so that you'll be able to see things, you'll be able to consciously handle information that comes through across time. Right now, in this body, not in another body. So I know that was a kind of roundabout way of saying it, but I think I agree with those physicists, given what I've been through, that all time is happening now, and we are living in physical bodies that have to eat, they have to breathe, we have to sleep, we have to have relationships in order to have children, we have to make, economies in order to get things that we need to eat, breathe, sleep, make ourselves shelter. And if we were walking around on a daily basis looking across all of the time streams, would we really do it? Would you do it, Eric, if you could see across all of time?
I think, it almost gets into that, I would almost be afraid to be overwhelmed by it. That was one of the things about the Dune novels, when Paul Atreides becomes, the Kwisatz Haderach, he's at the nexus where all probabilities are going on at once.
Ugh.
And I would not, I don't think I'd like that. I wouldn't mind being able to see till this coming Wednesday and, what the North Carolina Powerball numbers would be, but I think beyond that, I'd be okay I could stop there and be perfectly content. No, I don't know if I'm not sure if I'm wired for that. And I kind of like the surprise. I mean, can you imagine if you could see, I'd get bored as hell. It's like, well, today's the day I'm going to trip on the banana peel and fall down the stairs, or,
yeah, we'd be like
I don't think
Q.
I'd want to know too much.
We'd be like, we'd be like Q. It'd be like, well, what's going to happen? Well, should I bother to get out of bed? Well, what's going to happen today? Let me take a look. And then we'd just be like, forget it. I don't.
Yeah, but okay. But if that was the case, if our free will kicks in, and this is what we see today is going to be, and we say, well, I'm not going to get out of bed. Well, then do we see at that moment the day progressing because we didn't get out of bed, or when we decide not to get out of bed, does the entire timeline change? I think it all boils down to the probabilities, from least likely to most likely scenarios, how it all unfolds.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is, what are we doing here? Are we here co-creating a reality? Because this was another thing that the aliens got into about consciousness, which is that your consciousness, pure consciousness, creates physical reality. Now, physicists would say the Big Bang created physical reality. But I was reading some things from the Zetan information that was channeled through Paul Hamden, where the Zetans are basically saying your physical body your etheric reality, your sort of astral etheric reality, can be made physical, and that's how physical mediums do things like wine apportation, or they bring in objects into a room full of people, and not in the fake way, not in the debunked way, but in the I physically created a rock and it has fallen into the middle of this room, or it has been placed in somebody's hand. And it's a combination of consciousness used in a special way, reacting with information, physical energy information that's not physicalized in the etheric realm. But and the aliens said, when Paul was channeling this, the aliens said, consciousness does something so that consciousness is experiencing physical reality. So basically it was like a big circle. Like, well, first you have consciousness, and then consciousness makes physical reality, and then consciousness resides in physical reality. And you kind of go, but why? But without physical reality, we don't have any linear time. So then the question becomes, well, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? Why is consciousness, if the aliens are correct, consciousness creates physical reality and then lives in it? The question then becomes why. And since I don't know the answer, Eric, what do you think?
Well, I read a book not too long ago called The Unobservable Universe, which delves into how the human consciousness both observes and creates the reality that we live in. And it's one of those really great theories and one of those really great books that leaves you thinking, I need to find out more, because now I've got more questions I had before I read it, other than answering the question about if the tree falls in the woods and there's nobody to hear it, does it make a sound? That got answered right off the bat, but everything else is still up for grabs. But it was it's almost as if consciousness creates the material world around us. To me, it's almost like God doodling. It's consciousness has to have something to be aware of, therefore it creates the reality. And they feed off each other. It's like a flywheel effect, almost like perpetual motion.
Yeah. Well, that's, and that gets back to Hinduism when I was talking about the Anatma and the Jivatma. One, I think it's the Anatma, I could be wrong, it could be the Jivatma, is they call it the diddler. Like it just kind of goes in and decides to diddle around with a piece of music or a story. And that's sort of your personality, your consciousness in a body doing a thing. And the other, the Anatma, is, I hope I have it non-reversed, is actually sort of the higher consciousness that does not do that stays in its primordial state, or the some people would call it the creator or God. And, maybe we're all Q from Star Trek. Maybe that's what's going on here. We're just a bunch of Q who got bored and said, well, then let's make some physical reality and then forget about ourselves. We'll do a BTO and forget about it. I don't know.
Well, I got to wonder, if we are eternal spiritual beings, how I would think you have to have these life experiences and these moments of forgetfulness, because I don't give a damn how much you like something. Forever is an awful long time to do it. I mean, I almost look on eternity as the hell. The idea of you die and it's like, oh God, now I remember why I went down there to forget. That's the only thing about dying that bothers me. I don't think it's going to be an end. I just think it's going to be, oh God, like the Monday morning of the soul. It's like, oh God, the work week's starting again. And I think these lifetimes, these brief little lifetimes where most of us are not connected with anything else other than our day-to-day existence, getting from point A to point B over the appointed time of our life, that's the break from being that higher being, that one that knows everything that's happened, everything's going to happen, and just sort of, I would think that there'd have to be an apathy that would develop over time, over experience.
Okay, so that being said, perhaps this is what the Australian outback dwellers call the dream, that we are actually dreaming. We are the creator dreaming these experiences. This is not actually a waking experience. It's just that, the creator's out, the creator being the big consciousness. I'm using that loosely, so don't jump on me for putting a primordial creator linked with consciousness there. It does have some Hindu and Buddhist background, but the creator being got bored, was looking at everything, was like, oh, I can create multitudes and multitudes of universes across all of space, across all of everything, across all of eternity. I can just keep doing this and look at all those multitudes. And now what? I think I'll go to sleep. And when I go to sleep, I'll go live in those universes in a myriad of ways. And that will be interesting. That will be an adventure. That will be something else to do. All right, I want to hear from chat room people about this because my brain's getting a cramp.
Well, here's another thing. What if the multiverse itself is a single, just infinite consciousness, but it doesn't know itself so much because it is infinite, seeing from one side to the other, and that each of us, our life experience is a way of, between all the different races out there in the universe, all the different ways of being, maybe that's the way the universe gets to know itself. It knows itself as a mountain range. It learns to know itself as a brief mortal. I mean, just all these, as a cat, in which case it's really getting, it's really scoring well at my house because the cats rule. But I mean, all these individual things we see as life, or just as existence, period, are a way of the universe learning what it is and who it is.
So the universe might be a 3-year-old who says, oh, right, that's my belly button. What is my belly button? Why is that there? And then it spends some time, looking at its belly button going, oh, look at that. Oh, wait, that's a finger. Or a 6-month-old. You know how little, have you ever seen a baby just look at its hands and go, what are these? Why are those there? Maybe that's it. Okay, so physics-wise, time is supposed to be created along with matter in a Big Bang event. What do you think of that?
I have, the Big Bang has a lot of problems. If you look at the cosmology where the Big Bang to the current observable universe, there's a lot of problems. Einstein created more issues than he actually, solved. Because the model, if you look at it, from a single origin point of infinite density to what we have now, the speed of light could not have been the same in the beginning as it is now. Because if you take the Big Bang model using the constant for the speed of light, 136,000 meters per meter square, anyhow, it doesn't work. the observable universe, relativity, and the Big Bang do not agree. It doesn't work that way. So,
because there's a bunch of
apart.
Yeah, there's a bunch of non-observable universes. What is it? 40% dark matter and some percentage dark energy, and little things called axions running around, whatever those are.
Well, and also they discovered that there's probably trillions of more galaxies, at least billions of more galaxies than the current number allows. And I've always thought it was kind of strange or kind of arrogant presumption for this bunch of talking monkeys barely out of the Stone Age to say, well, the universe should have this much mass and it's missing. It's probably right in front of us. We're just not able to see it. Or it's clouded. There's cosmic dust out there that obscures things. But there's some astronomers, and I believe they were in Britain, that were talking about, there's billions more galaxies out there than we currently see. And if you have all these billions of galaxies, you really don't need to come up with this exotic dark matter stuff to explain the missing mass that you're assuming is missing from an earthly primate standpoint.
Right.
So there's so many holes in our philosophy in our cosmology because, quite frankly, we're just not out there and we don't know.
Right.
I guess that's why they call it the theory, because it hasn't been proven yet.
Right. And it may never be proven. So we have a lovely piece of writing that came into the Spreaker chat room from Robert White, and it's about the dream time from the Australian outback. And it says, during the creation of our world, the ancestors moved across a barren land, hunting, camping, fighting, and loving, and in doing so shaped a featureless landscape. Moving from dreams to actions, the ancestors made the ants, the emus, the crows, the possums, the wallabies, the kangaroos, the lizard, the goanna, the snakes, and all the food and plants. They made the sun and the moon and the planets. They made humans, tribes, and clans. Oh, gotta scroll. Each could transform into the other. A plant could become an animal a landform, a man or a woman. Everything was created from the same source. Everything was created in our dream time. As the world took shape and was filled with species and varieties of the ancestral transformations, the ancestors tired and retired into the earth, the sky, the clouds, and the creatures to live within all they had created in our dream time. So, yeah.
It's as good an explanation as any. I mean, I love that philosophy right there. I mean, there's just, here's my thinking on this. We have this inborn need to find absolute answers. Maybe the whole idea is that need, that motivation, keeps us evolving and moving forward, but there is no final answer. There is no totality of knowledge. It's always going to be a continuum. You get a little bit more, every generation seems to get a little bit more, but it's a continuous, infinite, never reaching the end point. Because face it, look at the idiot at the turn of the 19th century who says, well, folks, we've learned everything there is to know. Science has basically done its job.
Yeah.
And this was one of the foremost thinkers of the time. It's like, give me a break, guy.
Yeah.
It just, thank God people like that come along just so that somebody else will say, oh, bullcrap. But, you know, we're always going to be able to push a boundary or find something new.
Right. Okay, so we had some questions for you, Eric, before I went back to that. Craig had asked, what do you think of string theory or superstring theory?
Other than the fact there's no way that it'll ever be proven, the musician in me loves the idea of reality being created by music. Because you think, what is a vibrating string? You know, think of a guitar, a harp, a piano. Vibrating strings are music.
Well,
so it's an attractive theory. Like I said, I don't think they'll ever be able to prove it, but hey, there are no absolute answers, so it's as good as any.
And my thought on that, it's not scientific, but I had a brief reading with C.S. Lewis because I knew a person in spirit who, you know, sometimes you can think whatever you want of this, but I am a spirit medium, and sometimes I do have friends in spirit who do things, like they go study things, they go learn things, they go take courses with people. And C.S. Lewis, the great Christian apologist who also wrote the Narnia books and had a wonderful understanding of folklore and fairies and the paranormal as well, had said in a C.S. Lewis roundtable in spirit, he was explaining how reality is based on strings. That the reality that you don't see are the quarter notes. So you know how we have half notes. We have C, C sharp, D, D sharp. And then he said, what you're not seeing is the quarter notes. And I went, I get it. The fairies are in the quarter notes. You know, we can't process that vibratory rate in juxtaposition to the vibration that we're in, because we don't have the ability to do that. Like, we're vibrating at a rate that's just a quarter step off of what they're vibrating at, but they're right there with us. And I'm wondering how much string theory would put to that, you know, in terms of actual physical reality, if we knew more about it, if I knew more about it. So, yeah, I like what you're saying, Eric.
I would also say one of the things, you know, maybe it's not so much in the quarter notes, but it's in the rests. People think, you know, when you read music, you see this barrage of notes. But what gives those notes their meaning? The pause, the eighth rest, the quarter rest, the whole rest, you know, those moments of silence within the song. That's what gives the song or the music its voice, really. Otherwise, it's just noise. Right. There's no meaning to it because it's always a signal. It's always bombarding you. The sound is constant. So maybe, you know, the silence is the most important part of music.
That's so we don't have a ghost box with too many channels. All right, Donna Colvin in the Spreaker chat room makes a comment. There is no dark matter. There's dust that absorbs light, and the universe is expanding from anti-gravity effect. Thoughts?
Well, that's kind of what those astrophysicists in England were saying. That we, we assumed that what we saw was all there was to see and calculated the mass of the universe from that. Well, that's sort of... That is sort of ridiculous because, you know, we only see out so far from our vantage point. There's a edge of what we can see because of what the speed of light is now. And we don't know if there's something beyond that edge. the universe is expanding into something, and we can't even, I'm not even sure if we really know where the leading edge of that expansion is.
I don't think we do. There's some plans. I have a friend who works on LIGO. There are some plans to use gravity waves as detectors. And this is hush-hush. I probably shouldn't even be talking about it. But now that they have found gravity waves and they know sort of the amplitude and the rate and all the things you need to know about a wave, gravity waves go through everything. So if you have a way of actually using them as a detection mechanism, perhaps you can find out how far away the leading edge of the Big Bang is. But then again, what would that tell you? I am not that smart. I don't know. But it could be a possibility that gravity is able to find out how big the universe actually is if you have a gravity wave detection system, and how far away the leading edge of the creation of physical matter and time is happening from us. And I'm sure it would be some exponentially phenomenal number, but you don't know. How do we know? We're like amoebas.
Another thing, what if it's just a big soap bubble in a foam of soap bubbles, and what we call the Big Bang is just where the edge of our soap bubble banged up against the edge of somebody else's soap bubble?
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Have they figured out how fast, or what? Okay, they've discovered these gravity waves, but is there a velocity to them? Are they, are they massless? I mean, how do we? It's like you can use light microscopy down to a certain, probably about, I don't know, what is this thing? 100 times 10, so 1,000. Standard clinically, $2,000, $3,000 light microscope can magnify up to about 1,000 times using just light. Now, if you use the electrons, you can, everybody's seen scanning electron microscope pictures.
Mm-hmm.
It now is the gravity wave the equivalent of the electron, where we've got the light, radio, the electromagnetic spectrum of light that we've been using. Our gravity wave is going to be that next level.
Well, that's what my friend from LIGO thinks. He thinks that, everything that is an energy or has an energy wave it's all on a continuum of one sort or another. And so it's, if you have a wave form, a waveform can be, it's related to every other waveform in the fact that it's a wave. That's sort of like consciousness recognizing itself as consciousness. It's a waveform, therefore it's related to every other wave. Every consciousness on the planet is related to every other consciousness on the planet. Because why? Because it's a consciousness. So there has to be a terminology for this sort of circular philosophy of beingness, and I don't have it tonight. But that's what he believes. It's a waveform. It behaves as a wave. It's not a particle. When they worked on LIGO, basically what they were looking for was something that would bend light. And they had the laser interferometers, which are basically, they're just beaming light over a long distance and waiting to, and then they have all of the lights hooked up to apparatus that will move when a very, very large, hard to detect wave hits those apparatuses. And so they're looking for something that will move things and then make the light change. But it's really just the laser, because the laser goes straight unless a wave hits it. And so I believe it is massless, but it has effects on anything that has mass.
Like a photon, okay.
Like a photon. So, but it's a wave, so what you're saying, about all these other, waveforms, it's related. So you could use it in the same way. Very odd. Okay, my brain hurts. All right, where do we want to go from here, Eric?
Wherever you want to go.
Well, here's the thing that the aliens told me, and this has to do with UFOs. And it wasn't exactly the aliens. It was partially the aliens, and it was a situation of me doing the thing with other researchers that our Keith Andrews probably does all the time when he gets a download, but he just probably keeps it to himself. So one of the things that I was shown is that thought, consciousness waves of consciousness, or thought waves, are basically the same as gravity waves. And so the gravity waves are just like huge consciousness waves. And consciousness waves are miniature, minuscule gravity waves. And somehow this was implied as being a way that certain ships would fly, or that certain yogis were able to levitate, that consciousness could affect gravity, or consciousness waves and gravity waves were related only to they were the same shape basically, and they had a relationship to each other. And then I talked to, after hearing this and trying to make sense out of it, I talked to a gentleman who had been working on an energy generation system that could become a UFO drive, and he's saying, yeah, they're both square waves. Now, I did not find out from LIGO if gravity is actually a square wave, but his thought was thought waves and gravity waves were square waves, and that's why when you saw ships darting across the sky, there was this whole rash of UFOs that you would see sort of going forward in straight lines, and then up in straight lines, and then over, and then back down, and it would all be in squares. And he said that's because they're using a gravity or anti-gravity wave, which is a square wave. So if something is if it's gravity, it's a square wave. If it's anti-gravity, then supposedly it's a square wave. But somehow this was pushing the ship along the square wave, and so the ships were moving up and down. What do you in straight lines? What do you think of that?
Well, it seems inelegant to me, like a praying mantis that's trying to walk. I don't know. Something about that, and I don't know. Something about that doesn't resonate in my head right. Maybe I'm not understanding it, but I don't. Well, maybe the problem is when you talk about square waves, I think of my electronic training, and square wave goes from 1, peaks up to 4. There's not a continuum like a sine wave. It goes from here, it jumps to there. It seems to me that these drives, it should be more sinusoidal. It should be more like alternating current, a continuum or a sine wave. Maybe I can't see past my own prejudice to what I think it should be to get much further than that.
Perhaps that is so. I when I first heard it, I thought, well, that could be, because one of the things I was shown was that consciousness can sort of cut through all of linear time, and one of the things that happened to me, we're going back to the story where the aliens put the big light on my head and grew these pathways so that I could see across time. But one of the things that happened was I kept moving. So, you think of your consciousness in your body, and it's in your body, and there it is. Well, after that experience, I kept moving through time to other bodies across different time frames. And to my mind, they were they were other me's because I was in their body and I was experiencing the emotions that they experienced and the situations that they experienced. And then I would come back to my own body and I would sort of process, okay, what was that about? And so to me, that had to do with a past life, sort of coming to terms with different past life situations and then different situations where I had dual reference as an alien being, whether or not that was forward in time in another dimension, I didn't know. But what I did seem to come to grips with is that, physical reality has a lot of sinusoidal waves, but consciousness is within physical reality. And so it's almost as if you have the straight line within the curve. And then I didn't know where to go with that. I sort of went, okay, consciousness is the straight line within the curve. What do you think?
Well, when you think, if you think of that illustration, think of the duality of light. It is both a particle and a wave, where usually you see the sinusoidal or the waveform being drawn vertically, and then they show that other function horizontally. So yeah, it's when you consider that square waves and sine waves exist in nature, it's probably a good indicator that at the very bottom of all of this, we're looking at resonance, sine waves, and square waves. Everything seems to break down into those three things.
Resonance, sine waves, and square waves. Can you say a little bit more about that in terms of how the resonance and the sine waves and the square waves, what resonance has to do with it?
Well, resonance to me, and the way I take the term, resonance is like a guitar string. Take your open E string, your low E string, pluck it. That note, that is the resonance of that particular string. Or take anything that vibrates and at its like peak energy, that is its resonance.
Okay.
The Earth has a frequency that it vibrates at, that Tesla was tapping into, and there's your common wall, the current, the electricity in your home has a resonance, a vibration of around 60 hertz, 60 cycles.
So I actually agree with this, because one of the things that in working with the aliens and working with ships, that I was taught was that you use consciousness to tune your resonance. So if you're going to travel from one place to another, you're basically just matching the resonant frequency. So if you're going to D sharp, then you tune. Consciousness is the thing that tunes the waveform, the physical sinusoidal waveform, to D sharp, and then you arrive there. And this would be like, okay, if you're going to go to zeta, or if you're going to go to another part of the M-brain structure, you're going to have to tune. Your consciousness will tune everything to match that physicality, and pop, you'll be there. And it really is, if you're in a ship, if you're driving a ship, it's like they basically say, think about who or what you're going to, think about it, and then there's this sort of, electricity that flows, and then there's an old TV screen that goes black and white, and you've got this one white band, and then there's a pop, and you pop out into this other resonant frequency. And so I agree with that heartily, that it is about resonance, and there's something to do with consciousness that tunes the sinusoidal string to be of equal resonance to any place in the universe, in in how aliens travel. Now, some people don't think aliens travel, but I do. Some people don't think there are any aliens. Liz asked in the Spreaker chat room, what if it's all military playing mind games and there are no aliens? Okay, well, I'm just going to ask you a question, Char. When has the military-industrial complex ever done something that doesn't make somebody a lot of money? And why would it be making anybody a lot of money to come and see pasty little white girl over here and mess with her brain? What do you think, Eric?
Well, being the scientist and the skeptic and all kind of sucks, because in my heart of heart, I believe that there are ETs. I mean, I can't prove it, beyond a shadow of doubt. I don't have the smoking gun. I have seen craft in the night sky doing things that, unless we've come up with some really crazy, what they call them, inertial dampeners, a human pilot would be pulped. I don't see the military-industrial complex putting the effort into that. I could see them abducting people and doing experiments on them to get around, the basic ethics of science. But there's more going on in the night sky than that. I just don't see a prosaic, answer for it.
All right, with that, we're going to have to go into our break. It is the top of the hour. We made it through and our brains did not explode, but I have a really neat thing to read when we get back about exploding brains, and not in a Halloween way. Thanks so much for being with us. This is Elizabeth Anglin and Eric Marcum talking nerdy. We'll be right back after these messages.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Marcum. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Four Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together we own the night. The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Elizabeth Anglin and SOR.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Elizabeth Anglin coming to you on Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com. We are so happy to be here with you tonight. We're getting nerdy with Eric Marcum, the SOR science editor, and we are talking about consciousness, time, and the Mandela effect. And we're going to get to the Mandela effect in just a little bit. Before we do that, some announcements. I just want to let you know that tomorrow night on Spaced Out Radio, we are joined by Jason Mathis talking about UFOs over the USA with Dave Scott. And in between now and then, we just also want to give thanks to all of our listeners all around the world, everybody who is listening in on KTLK The Fringe. Thank you guys for being here. WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia. At spacedoutradio.com on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network. Thank you so much for being here. And our guitar god who makes those strings resonate so pleasantly for us, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, now of Art of Anarchy. Thank you so much for making us some rockin' music for the show. We love it. We love that you help us out that way. If you are on Twitter, check us out at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like at Spaced Out Radio Show. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We are also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. We've got a lot going on there at the website. If you want to become an SOR Space Traveler, you can do that for just $5 a month and see us in the SOR Space Traveler chat room and get some decent swag at the end of the month. If you want to take part in the show, you will have to go into a chat room, either on Spreaker or on the SOR Space Travelers Club. I'm sorry, I'm a little lame. I'm not on Twitter tonight. I'm sure that it could be going crazy in there. I'm not sure, though. I am trying my darndest to work with a kind of crotchety computer and an extra computer I just got formatted. So bear with me while I get my technical self together. In terms of that, I just want to tell everyone, if you are asking a question and you are on the SOR Space Travelers chat room, I'm having a little trouble accessing it. Type your questions often and early, and I will get back to them. If you're on the Spreaker chat room, I'm doing pretty good getting to you guys. Thank you so much for putting your questions in there. If you have something you want to add, put it in either chat room. Now, before I get started again, I wanted to read something that kind of applies to our comprehension of this subject matter. And it's from Sogyal Rinpoche, and it's in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And it really has to do with how do you understand where you are in the universe, and what do you understand, and can you even understand it? So the Tibetans tell a story of an old frog who had lived all his life in a dank well, and one day a frog from the sea paid him a visit. "Where do you come from?" asked the frog in the well. "From the great ocean," he replied. "How big is your ocean?" "It's gigantic." "You mean about a quarter of the size of my well here?" "Bigger." "Bigger? You mean half as big?" "No, even bigger." "Is it as big as this well?" "There is no comparison." "That's impossible. I've got to see this for myself." So the two frogs set off together, and when the frog from the well saw the ocean, it was such a shock that his head just exploded into pieces. And we've been talking about how much universe is there in our universe. How do we know where the universe begins and ends? Physicality and time being one and the same thing. And what the heck is consciousness, and what does it have to do with all of this? Eric Marcum, our SOR science editor, thanks so much for being with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me come on tonight.
You are so welcome. I want to thank you so much for coming in. And we had a comment in the SOR Space Travelers chat room by Dale just before I went to break. And he basically was saying gravity waves are sine waves, or there's sinus waves. Dale says, and I like what he says, so I'm going to quote him, "The problem with trying to apply physics principles to the paranormal is that physics is mostly math and is only partially describable in language. So when we try to apply a spoken idea about physics to the paranormal, we end up just playing word games. I imagine you have experienced this. Have we experienced this or what?
I would have to say yes.
Yeah. Exploded frog brains. That's what happens when we try to put it into words and we start playing word brains. So, word brains, word games with ourselves about all of these things. Thank you, Dale, for that thought. Going forward, I'm going to go over to some information from a primer of the Zetan race again. And this is the quote on the energetic environment. And it's taken out of context, so bear with me. The Zeta, and this is a channeled Zeta that Paul Hamden, an Australian channel and physical medium, who is actually able to apport things to create matter out of etheric energy. This is what he writes, or this is the information that came through him and was recorded. The Zeta explains, to the best of its ability, the nature of the non-physical energetic environment that they are able to manipulate and experience. According to the Zeta, consciousness can create resonations of frequencies or states of consciousness in that environment and can join resonations of different frequencies. Such manipulations by consciousness would create patterns of modulation which are then experienced by consciousness as forms and sensations. The described processes seem to be consistent with the principle of the hologram. The physical realm is a subset of this energetic realm, and physical bodies are closely associated with energetic or etheric bodies. And then he talks about the physical mediumship part of it. In the seance room, physical matter, like ectoplasm, can be formed in the presence of a medium in an altered state of consciousness, and the material disappears before the medium returns to the normal state. The consciousness of the spirit control is thought to organize this matter so it corresponds with the energetic form. How this is done is not understood. That gets into kind of really far out places that you wouldn't go unless you're a medium and you're interested in physical mediumship or spiritism. But we were just talking about, Erica just said, hey, we've got sine waves, we've got square waves, and then we have resonance. So consciousness the Zetans are saying consciousness can create resonations of frequencies or states of consciousness, and that the environment and can join resonations of different frequencies. So it's kind of like playing music in order to make physical reality, and then it's kind of like the Aboriginal dream world. If they're making themselves, if the ancestors made themselves into people and animals and frogs and clouds and landforms. Consciousness is creating through resonation states of consciousness that can join different frequencies and then create patterns of modulations which are experienced by consciousness as forms and sensations. Oh my God! How you doing over there, Eric?
Well, I'm kind of getting in a debate with somebody in the chat room about the nature of what love is, and we were going to do a show on that. I think we need to visit the biochemical reality of love someday. But I think that is probably, I like that idea that reality and the making of reality is a form of music, or what we call music. I just love that idea. I mean, that even ties back into anybody that's ever read the Silmarillion, the creation of the universe and the creation of Earth was done through a masterpiece of music. And the things that were considered evil, like Melkor was the Satan in the Silmarillion, or the ultimate bad guy. He would sing a discordant line, and those around him would get pulled into that discord, and then, the creator would stop the music, start everything where he wanted it again. But the end result was there were these flaws that were sung into the reality, but the overall, the overreaching theme and the goodness of it, even those pieces of discord and those pieces of that would, we would look at in a reality and call it evil, worked for the greater good. And the creation itself transcended its flaws and was all the more beautiful because of them. And that, that kind of, the idea of the Zaydians talking about, creating the reality with music makes me think of that. And I don't know, that whole idea, thank God for Tolkien, because that just really, to me, I hope that's the way it's really done.
Well, to me, it's wonderful because I'm a musician too, and when I would process what I'm seeing in the world, especially processing anything beautiful, I'd want to go write music. So processing, clouds on the ground, not a foggy day, but a cloud on the ground day, and seeing, my horses in the backyard come through it, all of a sudden I think, there's music to that. There's music in that. And I would go, write a piece of music that would have to do with clouds on the ground and horses walking, presencing through that, and sunlight, all of these different aspects of our beingness that is so rich and beautiful and intense are so, in music you can get that emotionality out of this. So Liz is saying about consciousness and creating, not Liz, but Shar in the Spreaker chat room, it says, Liz, this then is how someone can use frequencies to mess with our minds. Well, this is how you can use consciousness, could be used to mess with everything. And I was commenting on Friday night when R. Keith Andrews was in the house that I have a friend who is a phenomenal telekinetic. And he was in a MyLabs program, probably to do 0 point energy, but what it appeared to be was that they were trying to make a Stargate that would beam people into anywhere they wanted to go. So rather than having a ship, what they had was this like a Stargate structured like thing, not as big, not as pretty as the one in the show, but it had like copper metallic coils around it, and somehow you needed a person of the right sort of consciousness to be able to make the beaming happen. And my friend just happened to be that person. And he did not want to be used for this particular MyLab or Black Ops situation. He thought that it would be a terrible thing to have human beings utilizing that, especially military or spies or anything like that. And so he went about trying to sabotage the program. And what happened is they had already the device that the aliens use to beam people in and out through walls, which is basically done at close range. They beamed 4 guys into his apartment and beat him within an inch of his life until they were disrupted by a group of aliens, and then they left again. Now, this sounds like a wild tale, but I remote viewed it all, and I know my friend to be exceedingly honest. He's over 60 years old. He has no reason to, was a cardiological nurse all of his life, so he was always helping save people who had heart attacks. He had no idea, initially what had happened. He just knew all of a sudden there were a bunch of men in his apartment. He'd been sitting there watching TV, and then there were a bunch of men in the apartment, and they were beating the crap out of him, and he had no idea how they got there. And, when I looked at it, and I looked at what it was about, I already knew that he was an amazing telekinetic. It seems like we are on the cutting edge of, are we going to use this understanding of what consciousness is and how it reacts with physical reality and what you can do with consciousness in terms of, making the right resonance to move things from one place to another, for example, or to move a ship from one place to another, or to move CIA agents or black ops or assassins from one place to another. Are we going to use it for good, or are we going to use it for evil? And, Shar, I know you'll get a kick out of this, because it really does come down to what are we as human beings going to decide, and how is that going to affect our fate? And at least that's my opinion. What's your opinion, Eric?
Well, if you even, okay, what we look at around us as reality, knock on the table. You go down to the molecular level, the atomic level, most of this solid object and this solid reality around us is empty space. So I find it entirely plausible that given some kind of technology to make the vibration of a person, I just really feel like through some kind of vibratory science, we could walk through walls. And I don't even know if it takes technology to do that.
Right.
I mean, it could just be an internal thing that most of us maybe don't know how to use. Mm-hmm. Because we don't need to on a daily basis. Evolution tends to reinforce those things that are necessary and do away with those things that are not necessary. Think of the human appendix. Look at the vestigial piece of a whale that used to be a hip girdle. They still have that in there, but they don't use it, so it's becoming a less prominent part of the anatomy. So I think maybe these, what we call psi powers, for whatever reason, the leg of evolution we went down as a culture, we didn't need those things. Or we lost touch with their value.
Right.
So they've, gotten vestigial.
Or are in some way undeveloped. Like perhaps it was for our own good because we were not morally and ethically inclined to behave. Perhaps it.
I agree with that. I mean, I think sometimes I will catch myself in an extremely foul mood. Believe it or not, people, I do have foul now.
I know you.
That's my default state. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if I had these kind of mind powers, 3 days a week while I'm driving to work, there'd be probably 100 people a weekend that would no longer exist on this planet. So thank goodness I don't have those kind of, mega mind powers or those kind of psionic powers. I mean, it just would be, bad. It would be a bad thing, people.
If he was a fire starter, there would be nuclear bombs going off in his general vicinity.
The road between Norman Road, my driveway on Norman Road, and the parking lot here in Clemens at the hospital would be a radioactive wasteland.
Yeah, unfortunately. We have a question from Donna in the Spreaker chat room. When we developed written language, is it possible we stopped relying on our psychic powers?
I almost wonder if the psychic power wasn't taken away and then we had to come up with the written language as a replacement. Maybe at one point it wasn't even so much an oral tradition. It was just we impart this knowledge through, think of the things we take for granted as a modern culture. Then you can't really come down to the source, the person that says it. It's almost like, I call it white information. It's like white noise, only more useful. It's out there. And it's common knowledge, but what's its origin? And maybe at one time we were a far better at that. But we started to lose it, and then we had to say, well, damn, I can't impart this knowledge to you the way I used to, through osmosis or whatever it was. So now I have to create this way of writing it down so that you can take it in through your eyes, a filter.
Okay. That being said, I want to go back to the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Everybody knows they made a big, and this could be a metaphorical tower up to the sky. Everybody spoke the same language. What if the same language was telepathy? Because I know when I do, when I speak with aliens, no matter what kind they are, if it's done telepathically, the brain translates it. The brain is this great universal translator to the extent that it can translate anything or understand anything about its general environment. It translates it. What if everyone was telepathic, and this is actually a story about Atlantis, which a lot of friends of mine who think that they know something about the Sirius B Council, they think was destroyed because people were not quite moral enough or good enough to handle the power that they had been given. That might, if we were thrown back onto ourselves because we couldn't deal with our anger, frustration, rage, desire to be aggressive, would that not explain why people are not as psychic? I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I think, I would think maybe, well, one off, I don't think that we were created from the mud of the earth. I don't believe that human beings are native to this planet. I think we came from somewhere else. There's just some things about our biochemistry and things about this earth that don't jive. And it's entirely possible that maybe our psionics, our psi power was taken away. It was like getting spanked. Maybe we started to go down the wrong, the wrong way, and they our parents, whoever they are, took them away from us. Because if you look at the Tower of Babel, you take at the story of Atlantis, and there's some other, God, it just fell out of my head. There was another thing I made a connection to, the Garden of Eden, the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. All three of these, and there was a fourth one that popped into my head, and I can't get it back, so I'll just go with these three. All of them talk or seem to point to an overreaching and a big mistake that the only way to correct was a severe spanking. And you look at what happened in these, we got expelled from paradise because we were assholes. We got kicked out, the Tower of Babel fell down and our one language was taken away, which I believe you're right. I think it was an intuitive version of telepathy, something that we didn't even have to think on. It was just there, like radio waves or something. Mm-hmm. And Atlantis, the idea is Atlantis got too big for its britches and was destroyed. All of these things seem to have a common thread in them, and I almost wonder if that's not linked to that part of our brain called the R complex, where territorialism, I would say the angels of our worst nature seem to come from that R complex. And maybe we're not going to get any of these back until we evolve past that.
Okay, so that being said, I tend to agree with that. Some people have issues with religions, and here's what I've kind of gone through in the past 20 years with issues with religion or not issues with religion. I did a sitting once about, what is religion for? Why do we have religions? and I am an experiential, quote unquote, born again Christian. I'm an experiencer of Christ, and having the love of Christ in my heart when I'm not really angry and I'm not experiencing my R factor. Because as Eric knows, most of the time I'm pretty okay. Just don't make me angry, and and I don't suffer all fools very well. But I have this experience of the love of Christ and the compassion of a being that we might call Christ. And so I sat and I asked Christ, what is religion about? And he said, it's about universalizing. It's about giving human beings the morals and the ethics and the understanding to universalize the human race so that it can become part of a galactic family again, which it has been cut off from because it experiences too much separation, too much anger, too much frustration, too much making ego slights solid, significant, and real. And until the human race grows into a collective sort of, turn the other cheek, which is actually in the Bible, human beings will be on this planet. They will not be able to access their full abilities to be telepathic. They will not be able to deal with other beings coming here from other places. And what needs to happen for the human race to collectively become universalized is that everybody needs to love, needs to be able to love and forgive unconditionally, and not be seeing everything else as a slight or as something, you are now my enemy, you pulled in front of me and then put on your brakes and I almost hit you, or you are now my enemy because you teased me too much in the chat room. It's like we have to be able to set those things aside, forgive and love, because when you look at the galactic community, right, you've got everybody doing everything. I mean, if you listen to R. Keith Andrews, you've got all sorts of beings doing things that they do. And how easy would it be to take offense at any of those things? Pretty freaking easy, right?
Yeah, one of the spin-off episodes of Star Trek, Enterprise, which I don't know why people didn't like it. I thought it was one of the best off the chute. When we go out there was so much looking at things from the human perspective and being wrong. Or, it's like, I'm thinking there's a scene where they're somewhere and this woman keeps taking the breathing mask away from her kid, and the kid starts, and it looks cruel. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the characters gets all indignant. It's like, hey, leave the kid alone. Quit being such a, well, no, the woman was weaning her child off of an atmosphere that he wasn't going to exist in anymore after a certain age, and getting him used to the air that he would have to. But from a human perspective, it looked like child abuse.
Right.
Until we have a broader sense, or at least the ability to mind our own business, I don't think we have any right to be out there. I mean, right. I would not want to get out there and totally offend some super, advanced race and cause the destruction of my home planet.
Right. And what's interesting is what we do with our religions. I just gave my take on it, what I was told about religions and what they're for, is what we end up doing with them is we end up making religions themselves, which if you look at the basis of them, most of them are talking about turning the other cheek and accepting, everybody, learning from everyone here, but also being in a state of acceptance and allowance of people to be different. And Islam has that very heavily, and people think that it doesn't. Well, it's because somehow our R factor has turned this message of love and allowance and compassion and peace into, well, you're different, and therefore, we must get rid of you. So all of these, Buddhism is probably the most peaceful across the board, but yet there are radical Buddhist sects, even within Tibetan Buddhism, where it's like, well, you don't sit your tantra right, so you're actually pulling in demons, so you are the demon ones, and now we have to fight you. That actually happens in Buddhism, and you wouldn't believe it, how picayune people can get about their philosophical and religious turf, never mind their home turf, stuff that's on the planet. These are my fish, not your fish. This is my mountain, not your mountain. Well, this was my great-grandmother's mountain, and your grandfather took it, so I'm going to take it back in the name of my great-grandmother, blah-bitty, 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 blah. Whatever, it seems that until we can make a decision to, can't we all just get along, we really will. Even things that are for our good can be misused and become things that are bad. And one of the people I know that are skeptics or that eschew religion say is that, look at how many wars religions have started. And I did want to address this. Yeah, but do they start, is it the religion and the philosophy that's written down that is starting the war, or is it how human beings with our factors are applying it, or are deciding to use a religion in order to create a power structure for somebody who wants to go on the war path or wants to have power to get that power, or to retake something, or to settle a score, or to, all of these other things. So it's very interesting. You mentioned R factor. I like it. And now, Eric, what do you want to talk about?
Well, what we got? 2.5 hours?
We got another hour and
we could. Let's look at this whole idea of territory. One of the misconceptions that I hear people talk about all the time is how the Native Americans didn't believe in ownership of property. Well, maybe they didn't think of it as a deed and title. But if you were of the Iroquois or the Cherokee, and you got in the other's territory, there was bad news. And if you look at the history of what became, between Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, this area that I live in was hotly contested by these several native tribes because, the hunting and the fishing were good, the climate was temperate. In other words, things that were necessary for survival. And they protected it. It's part of you look at the French and Indian War and the way the British treated the native peoples. And a lot of it, I just got to say the end of this, and that's why it's kind of fragmented in my head. But maybe they didn't say we own this land, but they, by God, didn't think anybody else had a right to be there. So they still had an equivalent idea of ownership without having it codified on paper. We live here.
Right.
You are outsider. You don't get to live here. And it's so much, if you look at how when the Europeans came to America, like they say, people who don't read history are doomed to repeat it. If you look at how the Arab tribes all interacted during the Crusades, and then you look at how the Native American tribes interacted during the colonization of what would become the United States, the parallels and the behaviors are just, it's like seeing the same history played out again a few hundred years apart. The whole concept of the enemy of my enemy is my friend until I get a chance to screw you over type thing. It's just horrible the way people are.
Yeah. Yeah, we forget. So there's also this sort of collective, we don't live a long period of time. Whatever we learn doesn't necessarily get 200 years ago we learned this thing. We created this country called the United States based on what we learned about people getting along and being able to live in community together. And now that translated some to other places. But now, again, after a certain period of time, we have forgotten or we haven't kept up a resonance of a sort of egalitarian understanding of sharing with each other. So, yeah, it's tough. We've got a long way to go. I think we have a long way to go as human beings. We have a call for us to move on to the Mandela effect from the Spreaker chat room. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's do it. Okay, so I want to start this by saying that the Star Trek's Mirror Mirror reality TV show had its 50th anniversary on October 9th this year. And I'm going to read something from a lovely website put up by Fiona Broom, who is a longtime paranormal researcher on the East Coast and in Canada. The website is mandelaeffect.com. And Fiona, thank you so much for bringing in Star Trek to this, because we also have a Mandela effect from Star Trek that Eric's going to talk about. So with that, she says, though many of the characters in the Star Trek Mirror Mirror episode were polar opposites of their prime reality selves, some continuity made the concept credible. Does it hold up today? I'm not sure, she says. But, of course, the Mandela effect is usually more subtle than this. And there are things that many of us have noticed. We have noticed products, spellings, and events that don't match our memories. How we have noticed other people with radically different personalities or radically different histories. If you have slid into an alternate reality, did your skills and personality quirks seem to surprise people who, in your prime reality, knew you well? Do you think that people can change from reality to reality, or is there a general continuity to how each of us behave no matter where, when we are? And I think that gives us enough to start with Fiona's questions. So if you've noticed a different product, spelling, event, or something else that's a different reality, please feel free to share it in either chat room, the SOR Space Travelers, or the Spreaker chat room in all caps, and I will try to relate it and we can talk about it. If you feel you slid into an alternate reality, tell us about that. I'd love to hear about that and share that with others. But Eric, you noticed quite a bit. You have noticed some significant things. And one of them was a Star Trek episode. Tell us what went on with
I
that.
actually went and watched it on Netflix. Okay. Anybody that has read my blog at SOR and knows what I'm about to say, I apologize. For those of you who couldn't find it where it's hidden, when I was a kid, we watched Star Trek, even the bad episodes, every Saturday. That was part of, that was the routine. Star Trek's on, go watch Star Trek. There was an episode called Alternative Factor, in which there's this character who is, depending on your point of view, a bloodthirsty fanatic or a calm man just trying to defend his reality. I remember that character, known as Lazarus, being done by Rip Torn, the actor Rip Torn. And I used to laugh, and to me it was this great cosmic joke, the idea of Rip Torn being a name. And every time, and my parents didn't seem to get it. So every time that episode would come on, I would try to Rip Torn, ha ha ha, what a fun, don't you guys get it? Rip Torn, yeah. And they never did. Well, a friend of mine gave me a book about Star Trek, and I was reading it, and it mentioned a different actor. And then I went through an Internet Movie database looking for Rip Torn. And I thought, well, maybe he was in a different episode, and I just never appeared. Every time that episode would come on, I would, I thought that stage name was such a funny pun that it was every time it came on. It's just like we all know kids have that a repetitive behavior that, they do. Like, well, that was mine. Well, in this reality that I am in right now, that character was played by Robert Brown. Now, I can't find a series that I would have watched that had Rip Torn in it. I didn't know who Rip Torn was except for that show until, Men in Black? And then I remember reading in the paper, now let's put the Star Trek episode aside. I remember reading and clipping the obituary notice out of a paper. Rip Torn had died. And that is why he wasn't in Men in Black 3. He was killed off in that trilogy of movies because he really died. He's very much alive. And I can't find that clipping. And I had another, I've had other things like this happen. I remember it was even in a book called The Making of Star Trek. They showed the little spaceshipy thing that, the Rip Torn character used to go between dimensions. And, actor Rip Torn on set was the caption. I can't find that book anymore. And I'm sure if I did, the caption would read, Robert Brown. So something happened in reality that jumped me from, where Rip Torn was in Star Trek to where this new character, I have no idea where he came from, but in this reality, it's Robert Brown. And since then, I thought I cut his obituary notice out, and he's very much alive. So, and it seems like the evidence of the shifts disappears when you shift. You don't get to pull your physical evidence through the timeline with you.
Right.
This has bothered me enough that I went back and I thought of all the things we watched, because we had sort of mom and dad controlled the TV back then. I watched what they allowed me to watch. And I've thought of every series that we watched, and I have looked at casting. I wouldn't have seen Rip Torn again until Men in Black 3 in my entire existence. I only knew him from my first reality, my first timeline, where he was in Star Trek. It was when he showed up on Men in Black 3, or the first Men in Black movie. It's like, oh, that's the guy from Star Trek. So, yeah, that's the thing about the Mandela effect that really, I would say, gripes me the most, is our evidence of the shift disappears as we shift. And I guess it makes sense that it would. Just looking at conservation of energy and matter is basic physics. You wouldn't carry something like that through into a reality in which it didn't exist to start with.
Right. Well, I have the editor of my book, or the copy editor of Experience, is a long-term editor of magazines, and one of the magazines that he was part of was a very religious Christian magazine, with in a church that had a lot of followers for decades, and still does. And he and his wife experienced a Mandela effect that just completely changed how they view reality and change their relationship. They still go to their church. They still do what they do. They're wonderful, light-filled Christian people. But they went to bed one night, and they woke up in the morning, and they were in a completely different decorated bedroom. Nothing else about their house was different. Just the bedroom was different. And they had searched for a long time to try to figure out where they were. They didn't say they noticed anything else different, but they didn't have the things that they had in the bedroom before. They were completely gone. So I agree with you that if you're going to be shifting through a timeline, or if even part of your experience is shifted through a timeline, the rest of that part of that experience isn't going to come with it. And what do you do with that? I had the experience of, I had my timeline shifted when I fell underneath a car and the car ran over my head and I was supposed to be dead. And instead of being dead, I woke up with my head against the front car wheel, picked myself up, pulled myself out from under the car, looked at the driver and said, "WTF is wrong with you, dude?" and expected him to get out and make sure I was okay, and he sped away. And I was shown later on through an alien intervention of another near-death experience that my timeline time had been altered. The timeline had been altered. And I'm still not sure if I died that day and I was put in the closest timeline over, or if they ran back time in order for me to sort of back up to the space where the car had not yet run over my head. Which do you think, Eric? Do you think I was put in the next closest reality over, or do you think they backed up time? Some force backed up time.
I think because as we go down through, supposedly, if you look at some of the physical models out there, as we go down what we're considering, what this consciousness talking right now considers our life path, there are parallel existences where we come to where there's a binary decision, left, right, up, down, yes, no. And the possibilities, we split off. And it's probably just easier to transfer the kernel of consciousness, that part of Elizabeth Anglin that perceives her life on a day-to-day basis in this reality that we are all right now sharing. It's probably a lot less effort to just move that consciousness over one step, as opposed to reeling back the flow of time and altering it. I think it's more like valence electron shell theory. They either take a little vibration away or add a little vibration, and you bump up into that next reality and move on.
And that would make sense for conservation of energy. I mean, a low entropy fix is better than a high entropy fix any day. So I just ended up one step over. I think I agree with that. I don't remember. I think the only thing that happened that would lead me to Mandela effect was that I had some dreams. I was 15 at the time it happened, and I had some dreams when I was 16, 17, and 18 where I felt like I was dreaming about people that I had been separated from, and maybe those people were in the other reality. Maybe they were still experiencing the reality where the car ran over my head. And so there was an emotional pull from one reality to the other between myself and those people, because we had been connected before that incident. So it's, I think that, I had some very strange dreams after that. I can't exactly pinpoint that, but I think you may be right about that. Okay, we have some questions. Why am I breathing heavily? Because I'm afraid to put myself on mute, John. Dennis in the Spreaker chat says, Jill Ireland, Charles Bronson's wife, died of cancer and wrote a book about cancer before she died. Only several years later, she wrote another book on surviving cancer when she died 5 years later. But I remember a very early teenage confusion about that. So, Jill Ireland.
You know, that kind of... I think Dennis, just between you and me, I think you're right. I have a vague... It seemed like she was dead, and then all of a sudden, hey, wait, isn't she supposed to be dead? And she wasn't. So, yeah, I get you. I think you might be right.
Okay, so that's an interesting situation right there. And we also have, the whole thing is that Mandela died. I remember that he died. I thought that he died, and then when he came to Boston, I was like, isn't he dead? And people looked at me and they said, why would he be dead? And I said, because he die at the end of the 80s? And they're like, no. And so, yeah, it was confusing for me, just the whole Mandela thing. And I don't think we had really said, hey, there is this effect where timelines can converge like this.
Well, that's, and it's just not Mandela. It's not just Rip Torn. Okay, this happened to me last weekend. I had a whole nother blog I was going to write, and what I'm about to relate to you guys caused me to write a whole different one. I was in the break room having a cup of coffee or something, and this crawler going across the bottom of the screen on the Sci-Fi Channel said something about, now I'm trying to say Wes Craven. It wasn't Wes Craven. Oh, crap. Here's another thing about Mandela effect. When you catch it seems like your brain gets, Clive Barker.
Right.
Okay, I remember not too long ago them announcing Clive Barker had died.
Right.
And I thought, well, crap, he wasn't that, it was sort of a bummer for me. I was always sort of a Clive Barker fan. I love his books. And I remember thinking, well, I'll reread Mr. Be Gone. In honor of, I hadn't read it for a while. I thought, well, I'll just, in homage to Clive's passing, I'll reread this book.
Okay,
well, this crawler going across the bottom of the screen is saying that he's in a collaboration with someone. Wait a minute, he's not dead.
With that, Eric, we're going to have to go to break. We've gone over time, believe it or not. I need a big. We're going to go to break. We're going to start talking about Clive Barker and more Mandela effect just after this. Hang on.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Marcum, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio. Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Elizabeth Anglin and SOR.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Cosmic Passport. I am Elizabeth Anglin, your host tonight, and I'm here with Eric Marcum, and we are talking about consciousness time and the Mandela effect. Before we continue, some announcements. I just want to thank everybody who's listening to the show tonight from around North America and the world. I want to welcome everyone listening on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, at spacedoutradio.com on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on KTLK, The Fringe. We thank you so much for participating with us tonight. And we also thank our resident musician and guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy, for making our great music for us. If you are on Twitter, check us out at Spaced Out Radio. You can give our Facebook page a like at Spaced Out Radio Show. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on Radio Guide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. If you go to patreon.com, we have some cool offers for you, our listeners there, so make sure you check those out. If you want to take part in the show and you haven't yet, you'll have to sign into one of the chat rooms. There's one on Spreaker that's very lively, or the chat room on Facebook on the SOR Space Travelers Club, where we have a bunch of punsters. So if you like puns, go there. If you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. We offer you some pretty decent stuff for that. We have swag, and we like to do it because we get to give you a gift if you win the swag at the end of the month. Please check out our news section, The Encounter, that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors, Eric Marcum, who's on the show with me tonight, and Everett Thiemer. And on spacedoutradio.com, you can check out Dave Scott's latest blog there as well. If you've had an experience that you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researchers are ready to help you find out what's going on. And again, we give a big thanks to everyone listening on WQEE 99 Rock the Key, and everyone in the Spaced Out Radio family, way down in Noonan, Georgia. Everybody in Las Vegas, we love you. Our hearts are with you. We are live in Sin City, and so are you, and we're so glad we're here together. The United Public Radio Network on 107.7 in New Orleans, hey, thank you. We thank you, and we thank all the listeners on UPN from over 160 countries around the world for being here tonight. We are talking about the Mandela effect and the things that people are remembering that they remember that's different. One of the things that has come up out of the Spreaker chat room is 90210, Beverly Hills 90210 star Ian Ziering, or Zaring. See, it's the last name I have a problem with. His name was spelled I-A-I-N for the longest time. Now, I remember this. I remember Ian Zaring being I-A-I-N and going, blah, 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 too many I's in that. And, how do you pronounce that? And now it's just Ian. So that's one of the things that is going on there that people remember and I remember as happening. Eric, are you back?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, Ian Ziering, Berenstain or Berenstain Bears?
I grew up as Berenstain.
I think I grew up to the Berenstain too. Yeah.
Hey, I would love to find those old books. And last time I was up in the mountains visiting my parents. Mom still has some of my childhood books. I couldn't find them, but Berenstain doesn't even sound right. Berenstain. I mean, In fact, I think I used to joke like Frankenstein, Berenstein, pronounce it that way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Berenstein. Okay. Dennis in the Spreaker chat room says John Carpenter also died of cancer, and yet he is still alive. Adrian Barbeau did acknowledge it, but Carpenter is still going strong. So, you know, there are people that died that aren't dead. Like, you know, I wasn't really dead when I had my experience of going under the car. Okay, so Dennis says that there's also something about the Kennedy assassination. There are photos of Kennedy being in a car with 6 people. They were all over the place about a year ago, and you could find the photos of only 4 people being in the Kennedy assassination car. Now pics with 4 people have vanished. Try and find one. But I do wonder if I can go back in Twitter and find the photos on the other radio show. So anyway, yeah. Do you remember Kennedy being any different, Eric?
Yeah, I remember there being the driver. Let's see, the driver, the governor. Well, I remember it being 5 people in the car. The driver, the governor, his wife, Jackie, and JFK. I don't remember 6, but like I say, you know, you do an image search and it looks like, you know, there's 6 in the car now. It's like, I don't understand that part. You know, Shar is asking, well, who takes the evidence? And Shar, it's not a matter of somebody taking the evidence. It's that as you move into another reality, or, you know, in my case, well, I think I've moved into an alternate timeline, the evidence isn't there because it didn't exist in this timeline. In this timeline, you know, Robert Brown plays the characters I remember. You know, there's no evidence of the alternate timeline because in this timeline, that's, you know, what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing is the truth of this timeline. And I don't think it's a matter of anybody trying to take the evidence or hide the evidence of this effect. It's just there's no evidence of something when it doesn't happen. And in this timeline, my memories didn't happen. Variations. I gotta wonder, you know, if we take the multiverse theory, and if you multiply, you don't even have to multiply, even if you just did simple addition, but say multiply every yes, no, okay, I'll call them binary decisions, where you have to create an alternate reality. Multiply that by all the people, animals, everything that can make a decision or has movement on the Earth, times all the other planets and all the other entities that also have to come up with binary. I would think that would fill up infinity. And maybe these... You know how sometimes you have to take your computer and do, you know, a defrag? You defrag the hard drive, or you clean up your hard drive. Maybe these instances of alternate time or these Mandela effects are the universe cleaning up its hard drive and making room. Because if every time, just think in your own family, every time in my case, the last 54 years, every decision that was made created an alternate timeline, an alternate reality, just with one family. Think of that going on throughout the multiverse. It would be so messy, and I think if there is a ultimate, creator, I would think it would just get to the point, I got to clean this mess up. Boom. Let's, hit a reset button, get everything on the path of, the best path or whatever is decided is the one to go with, and all these others got wiped out, and it starts all over again. So for whatever reason, the timeline I'm in now, my consciousness is traveling through, is the one that got left after the big reboot.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea of it may be that we need the universe takes care of us being in a low entropy state, that physical reality in some way requires for consistency less energy input versus having to put energy into things that maybe aren't that important. I mean, we all want to think, okay, my experience of life is just the most important thing there is out there because it's happening to me. And what happens if that's not actually the case? You have these random experiences that, when all is said and done, do you remember those 2 hours on Saturday afternoon you spent watching golf because there was nothing better to do? And maybe
I would pluck armpit hairs for some entertainment before I would watch golf for 2 hours.
I hear you. When I was a kid and nothing was going on and I didn't have a good book to read, every so often I would watch golf on a Saturday afternoon and I'd be like, why am I doing this? And just imagine if, I had this decision to watch golf on a Saturday afternoon and I decided, this is really boring. I think I'll go to the refrigerator and I'll, make myself some kind of sandwich. And what if I slipped on the way to the refrigerator and hit my head, and that wasn't really supposed to happen, and it all happened because I took a wrong turn and decided to watch golf, which was really boring, and then all of a sudden the universe says, wait a minute, you're not learning anything out of this. You're not learning anything out of the fact that you slipped and fell on your way to the refrigerator. So, next, in this other lifetime, you weren't watching golf. You were actually doing something productive like learning to play a piece of music. So let's shift you over there. I like that idea that the universe is self-regulating and that it would take care of, the dumb decisions that we make or the not so important ones that sort of lead to bad ends. So that maybe we're winning the Darwin Award more often than we think we are. But we don't actually win the Darwin Award because the universe took care of it, that makes me, thank you, Eric, that makes me feel very comforted that you put it that way. The universe creating a low entropy state, less energy consumed, and only the most important timelines being kept going. I like it a lot. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it just cleans itself up every once in a while and just, for in my case, and, let's not even look at it from an individual. Say, who am I in the grand scheme, of things? I'm seeing the effect, but maybe the reality is skewed toward an individual or a group of individuals out there. And they're the universe is focusing on these people because they are going to have some ultimate effect on everything. And the rest of us are just sort of caught in their wake. So it's like no big deal that Eric remembers what he remembers because he, in the grand scheme of things, he's just, an extra on the set.
Right.
So, the whole thing readjusts toward a path or a series of probabilities that are better for everything. I'm talking pan-universal. We get these little inconsistencies because, quite frankly, some of us just really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. We're here, we play our part, and we go.
Yeah, the extras who get paid $100 a day, and then everybody forgets that their elbow is in the shot.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm an extra. Yeah, I'll be out of here soon. Well, the interesting thing you were saying about maybe some people make more of a difference, and there are some cultish New Age ideas that I don't agree with, that sort of have to do with some people make more of a difference, and usually these cultish ideas have to do with a spiritual hierarchy. Do not get me started on the philosophy of spiritual hierarchy, except that I will say I believe everybody has spiritual equality, and you are deciding what to do with that spiritual equality each and every second of every day. And if you decide to be a douche, then guess what? That's what you are. And if you decide to be Mother Teresa, guess what? That's what you are. So free will and spiritual equality are my mainstays. But we do have, in the New Age community and in the sort of transpersonal psychology community, these ideas of people that are further along the spiritual path, on a spiritual hierarchy, have these abilities to be, they're more important because they have these abilities to influence. And influence things that happen. If they meditate, their meditations are more powerful. If they use their mind, they're more able to be psychic. I'll tell you what, I'm really psychic. I'm still just the same as all y'all out there. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of practicing and recognizing and then practicing, and I'll say that a gazillion times until my last breath. It's just a matter of recognizing what it is and practicing. But there are people in the world who believe that certain people are movers and shakers and have more influence. And I'm going back to the idea that in the Maharishi University, where they do transcendental meditation, and they found out that transcendental meditation did have effects on physical reality, that crime went down, and those sort of things. Perhaps it is true that somebody who has a great consciousness or has a great amount of energy combined with a very clear consciousness does make a difference, and perhaps there are people out there, or beings, or higher consciousness in the form of human beings, or just beings that are somehow regulating the flow of each timeline. And I wish Skeeter was here because she could tell us more. Are there beings of higher consciousness who do regulate the flow of timelines? What do you think, Eric?
Well, man, that's making me think.
I know.
That's sort of like the whole mythology of the archons, and in a way it makes sense, but in another way, man, that's kind of freaking scary, And I'm not sure I like the idea of, I don't know if that could really happen, because if you think of everybody's free will, trying to guide a reality like that, control a reality like that, it would be like trying to herd cats. It really, I don't know if, that'd have to be one heck of a will in order to force us all and herd us all down this single path. Well, and that's part of how Frank Herbert, that was the ultimate demise of, Muad'Dib, is he was trying to push humanity along a path, and every correction he made was a disaster, to the point where, his own son has to sacrifice himself to start a cycle over. And that whole series of books, I'll leave the analogy alone, because after after the fourth book, they kind of went to what the hell is he talking about? But
sideways. Yeah.
And what does this have to do with the original storyline? But it seemed like the more he tried to control, and the worse it got.
Well, okay, so let's go to, this is sort of a side thing. We will get back to Mandela effect, but let's go to Philip K. Dick wrote The Adjustment Bureau, which I have not read. If I did, I read it as a kid, and I saw the movie. And another book he wrote was The Man in the High Tower, and The Man in the High Tower has recently been on Amazon as a series, and it's very, very good in my opinion. And it's about what happens, what would happen in a parallel reality where the Germans won World War II, and what would the United States look like. But there is a man who is able to get films from parallel realities, and there are some people in the storyline who actually come from parallel realities where the Germans didn't win. And adjustments are made throughout the storyline by these sort of active participants. But the most active participant, she's not actually somebody who spends a great deal of time in a parallel reality. She spends a short deal of time in parallel. I don't even remember if she does any at all. But her goodness, her moral and ethical and compassionate goodness puts her at the center of the story for sort of engineering a low entropy outcome for all of humanity, given the reality that she's in. So I've just summed up the story. Now you can go watch it. You're going to wonder what happens and be like, oh, Elizabeth summed it up. Sorry, spoiler alert. Don't watch it if you don't want it to be spoiled, but do watch it if you want to see something about parallel realities and what might happen. So The Man in the High Castle. The Man in the High Castle is what recently came out, and it should still be available on Amazon. And it's very, very interesting. Now, Philip K. Dick's next book that is more along the lines of what I experience as a spiritualist medium who works with spirit guides is about the Adjustment Bureau is basically a bunch of spirit guides who are overly controlling. Have you seen that, Eric?
Yeah, I've read. There's I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but there was an awesome biography about documentary about Philip K. Dick, and that dude's brain was a sack full of wild cats.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read I had a friend where I used to work that was really big Philip K. Dick fan, and he gave me a book to read, a biography of Philip K. Dick, and then an autobiography. It's like the guy was the kind of genius that slips over into bat crap crazy because there's nowhere else to go.
Yep.
I mean, it was just our reality wasn't capable of containing the spirit that was inside that body. And it manifested itself as, people that don't know who Philip K. Dick is have probably seen at least 2 or 3 movies based on books of his without realizing it. Minority Report, Blade Runner, like you were saying, Man in the High Castle. And I'm thinking that the movie about the artificial intelligences that we were at war with was based on. God, I can't remember the name of that one.
Yeah, I can't remember the name, but I believe you.
But there was a story where the guy thinks he's rescuing a woman and sending her to get help, and it's actually one of those AIs, and he's pretty much just doomed the human race. That movie was based on a Philip K. Dick. I think it was called The Other Kind was the name of the short story.
Right.
So, yeah, Philip K. Dick he's everywhere, and people just don't, a lot of them really don't realize how much of his his thought, his fiction has worked its way into the collective consciousness.
Right. Well, I know a person, and this, I hope that you're not listening, who has an alternate, a parallel reality boyfriend. And he's actually a parallel reality boyfriend. She's not crazy. She's very, very together. But the main problem that she has in life is that a lot of her energy goes into this parallel reality boyfriend. And he is German, and the Nazis have won, and he is now somebody who is, there's absolutely no reconciling their two timelines. Like the timelines are so far apart that she's never just going to Mandela effect over to his timeline. And it's very hard for people who are her friends because, she's functioning. She's in the world. She's got a business. She's making money. She's got kids. But she has this relationship that is so bizarre and so irreconcilable that everybody who knows her is like, you really got to stop that, because you're just losing energy over to this parallel reality. And it's not doing anything for you here, and you're not actually being in one place at one time. But what's interesting about it is like the man in the high tower. In that reality, how close was it that if Hitler had made different decisions, it could be that we would be living in a reality where Japan and Germany won the war. And that, anyway, that's where her boyfriend is. Not because she's a Philip K. Dick fan, just because that's how it worked out for her. So some of this stuff, I think, could really appear to manifest as a sort of schizophrenia. If we have all of these different lives across parallel reality, why are we as conscious beings so schizophrenic? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, maybe that's what schizophrenia is. When you think about it, these people seem to be in touch, or they are convinced of a reality. What if, I'm complaining because I got untethered from my previous, whatever my purpose was, whatever my original timeline was. I have become detached and untethered from that. I'm on a timeline now where I feel like the only thing needed of me is to outlive my parents, because I don't want them to have that sorrow of, bearing their only child. I don't feel like I have this direction. It's, okay, I'm ready to get out of this game as soon as possible, because all I foresee for the future is getting up, going to work, eating, sleeping, getting up, going, to the end. I don't, and you have these schizophrenic people who, they hear these voices, they hear, they're in touch with a reality that we don't experience, so we call them schizophrenics, and they're crazy. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've still got one foot, I would be schizophrenic if I still had a foot tethered in my original timeline and being in this one.
Oh.
I would be, what would my view of reality be in that case? I would have my original timeline consciousness, and I would have the consciousness that's the Eric Marcum that works in this laboratory, does this, does that, and then that other one at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it just seems it's a crying shame that they have to pick one or the other and don't really get a choice.
Well, what's interesting, and Shar just said something in the Spreaker chat room, is she says, I think you just hit it. I don't know that I was saying this, but this is an experiment to see what we can take and what we will expect. No, I don't exactly see it that way, but I have read and had conversations with Paul Hamden, who works with the Zetans, about SQEs, which are the created quantum environments, and that there are many, many SQEs around the Earth which are creative quantum environments that are experiments to see what human beings can take and what human beings will expect. So they're sort of like matrices within our matrix, where certain people who are experiencers, who are alien experiencers, abduction experiencers, a lot of us remember being in SQE environments. And Paul has a theory that many of the things that experiencers go through, they didn't actually go through. So, for example, where our Keith Andrews and I would say, yes, people can fly ships, and here's what's actually going on, Paul would turn around and say, well, it's actually not that complicated. That's just an SQE event, a synthetic quantum environment event. What if some of these Mandela effect issues have to do with people who have been in a synthetic quantum environment under a testing situation that's been created by certain alien groups? Okay, my brain just went, what do you think, Eric?
Well, I think, every night, for the most part, most of us close our eyes for a few hours and lose touch with where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And that we don't know, maybe as soon as we shut our eyes and go to sleep, when we enter what we think are the dreamland, that's the reality. I mean, it's hard to take a single point of view, and I think maybe that's why we as humans have developed this sense of somehow have agreed that what we're seeing as reality is like an agreed, shared experience, because the alternative would be horrible. We pretty much have a consensus view, up is up, down is down. We can point to a color and say that's red if you're not colorblind. But who's to say the red I'm seeing is the same red you're seeing? We're agreeing that color is red, but it might not be, what I see as red might not be what you see as red. I mean, it's just a matter of we have a shared concept of reality when we're awake or when we're in this consciousness. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're right. But the alternative would be what we would call insanity, so let's just march along and accept what the consensus view is.
Correct. And the consensus view about, basic things, up, down, red, yellow, love, not love, emotional realities, situational realities. I mean, if we really compared our situational realities, I think we'd all go nuts. If you start comparing how people experience things and where they are, oh my goodness, I think we'd all just lose it. All right, that being said, parallel realities seem to be about situational realities. Do you know what I'm saying, Eric?
Right.
And so if consciousness is creating physical reality, and if consciousness creates parallel realities based on free will being applied in different situations, how many parallel realities, given that information, do you think there are? I've been told how many there are, but how many do you think there would be if that were the only modifying factor?
Oh my God, I don't see how you could have a quantity. I would think that number would be asymptotic in that it would be approaching infinity in both directions. I just don't see how you could quantify that. I can't that's a number too big for me to wrap my mind around, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, me too. I've been told that there are 13, but that may be, if you think about it, if there are 13, and I've done some quantum jumping, and I've done some quantum jumping for other people, especially people who've come in who really appear to be having parallel reality interference with their life. Like you've got energy from this life going off into another one, or you've got energy to a parallel, or you've got energy from a parallel coming into this one, and it's really getting confused and discombobulated. But I've also looked at my own when I realized that this was a thing you can do, because what Elizabeth does when somebody tells her, oh, you can do this, she goes, oh, yeah, okay, let's go try that, without thinking about her brain going splat. And so I did start to look at these 13 different parallel realities. And what was interesting is that some things appeared to be set, that there were some events that were set, like you will meet this person and you will move. So one of the things in my life, in my 13 realities that was set, was that I had a fiance or boyfriend-fiance in 1992, 1993, who it was set that I would move from Boston to the West. And in the parallel realities, in the one that I'm in, I moved back to Boston when we broke up. But in another reality, I actually moved up to Telluride, where I ended up living later in this lifetime with him right at that time. And then we broke up. But in every single one of them, we broke up. You know what I'm saying? I ended up in a different geographic location, but I ended up in that geographic location at least at some portion together. Like there seemed to be channels, like there was a deeper channel. You will live in Telluride. You will have this relationship and you will break up. You'll either live in Telluride right after that, or you'll live in Telluride, long after that. And what was interesting in this reality, when I moved back to Boston, I felt like I was in the wrong place. In almost every single one of the other realities, I was in Telluride. I was in the mountains. And I used to sit when I was in Boston, and I'd be sitting at MIT, and there's a lot of work to do, but sometimes I'd just have the computer up, and I'd be looking at the mountains, going, home. And so I guess my point is, I think there's a cleanup, like Eric was saying. I think there's a cleanup of all the stragglers. And then I think there are deeper channels. Like, as a reader, I don't necessarily believe in fate, but I believe that there are some things that are basically fated, sort of the holographic Akashic learning life record plan, which takes us completely out of this altogether. But would it make sense if there are only 13 that energies would sort of coalesce along those 13 different channels, and then lesser things would be cleaned up?
I don't know. It just doesn't seem like you think of... Well, I can kind of see that where there's a channel, and I'm thinking in terms of limnology, or, like a river. Mm-hmm. There's this... In order to evolve, or whatever this life experience is supposed to be, you've got this river channel, and the parts that you can't alter by free will are the boulders that are in the channel. But you have a choice when you come up to the boulder to go around to the right or to go around to the left. And I think at that point is when you'd have to go well beyond the 13. Because for every version of you in every multiverse, every one has that chance going over, left, right, or over, and that would I don't see how that could work in 13, just 13. But, there again, I'm not seeing it from the same point of view you do.
Well, and that's the thing, is like I heard 13. I kept bouncing from one to another. I wasn't actually counting as I was bouncing, so that could just have been some spurious information about 13. But then I think about, part of me thinks, well, maybe that's just it's a fractal pattern, and there are 13 strings on it, and then over here there's another one, and then over here there's another one. And then I just kind of go, I need some breakfast. It's like thinking about all of these. That would just be so tiring, to be a consciousness living as a certain person in all these iterations. There's a reason why we don't like music that's too repetitive of motif and iteration, because it gets boring, right?
Right.
Right. So.
And there again, that goes back to my statement. Maybe that's why we come and have these. People say we are spiritual beings living a material existence. Maybe we do this to ourselves to break up the boredom. Eternity has got to be, like I said, it almost seems hellish to me. I think I would prefer oblivion to, oh God, we're back here again. I just don't think, maybe this is how we take a break from eternity.
Right.
We kind of pre-program. It's like, okay, I want this obstacle, this obstacle, this obstacle. Last time I had, maybe we remember these lives, and we're like, or it's just, maybe it's like setting up a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. You roll dice and you set your path up according to the rolls of the dice. I don't know. It just seems like it's just the idea of eternity scares me. And I just think maybe coming down here and being a meat robot for 50, 60 years is a way to break the monotony.
Yeah. Well, look at it. I mean, if you're Buddhist, you would look at it as if memory and desire drives everything that we do as individuals here on this planet, that we have certain memories and certain desires. What if memory and desire is driving a learning experience, and what if these parallel realities are just it's sort of like having the learning experience in multiple realities to see what the outcome would be if you make different choices. Then you get a much fuller experience, rather than your sort of eternity looking at the universe expand and going, there it goes, it's expanding. Instead, you come here, you have these different storylines, and the storylines have different prisms of information contained with them, or different tones of information contained with them, and that's somehow satisfying. It's not exhausting, it's satisfying to make slightly different decisions and then see what the outcome is. We must be karma junkies. I think we're karma junkies if we're doing that. You know what I'm saying? It's cause
Knowing
and effect.
me, I probably pissed off the front desk, and they said, "Okay, guess where you're going for a few years." It's like, this is my time out. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you hurled a nuclear bomb at someone. No, I don't believe in karma as like punishment. I think it has to do with memory and desire. I used to think of it as punishment because I used to see myself as more of a victim of life than I do right now. But if you think of yourself as a victim of life, then your karma is your punishment. But if you think of yourself as a non-victim, then you really, and you sort of get to the emotion of it. It really is, unremembered things and desire, and why we experience a desire to do something or not do something. All right, I want to get back to consciousness, because you're a biologist. If we have consciousness in our body, where do you think it's located?
I don't think it's in our body.
Ooh.
To be honest, my thought, and I believe this with every core of my being, the brain is simply a tuner. All of consciousness is out there as this omnidirectional, omnipresent broadcast. Mm-hmm. And what we call consciousness, what boils down to consciousness for me, is that part of that signal which my brain is capable of tuning into. I'm on 96.7. You might be on 101.3. If we use radio as an analogy, because being in the brain, and I think the brain, okay, this is how I believe our brain picks up that part of this universal consciousness that we're capable of processing. And it might resonate through the entire body. You know, that's why organ transplant people start to have traits of the donor that they didn't have before. But I don't think consciousness, I don't think it can be tied to the body, because I think we all agree there's something past this existence. If it was tied to an organ, part of this meat suit we wear, once the meat suit died, and well, that the consciousness would have to go with it, because the consciousness was created by the meat suit. Once the meat suit's gone, no consciousness, and I don't believe that.
Here, I agree. I think that the body is like a tuner. It's the cello, it's the violin, it's the really great guitar, and the tuning capacity of it. Because, like you were saying about heart, transplant people, especially heart transplant people. There's a story of a man who he got a heart of another man, and that had died, and then he ended up leaving his wife, somehow finding the wife of the other man who had died, and then marrying her. And it didn't work out. What happened is the guy with the heart from the other man ended up eventually dying. Like, the relationship didn't work out, and then he was so heartbroken or something else that he died. But there's so much, like, little things they find out that people with heart transplants are liking things they didn't like before. Like, if the person liked to go to Starbucks and get a latte at 8:10 in the morning, all of a sudden they'll find themselves driving to Starbucks to get a latte. But the story, it is a true story about the guy who ended up leaving his wife and going to the wife of the widow of the man whose heart he had. So the body is a powerful thing. Now, the question is, how does this all work? Is it chemicals? Is it just plain old physicalized energy? I mean,
I don't know. When you think, okay, I've heard you say it, I've heard other guests say it, that if we want to be a better version of ourselves, meditate.
Yes, meditate and
and you'll raise your vibrational level and all this. Well, maybe that's how we tune the brain to pick up the other channels. It's like you subscribe to a better cable package. I don't know. But I'm thinking back to, okay, when something devastating happens to us, we lose a loved one, we lose a pet, do we feel it in our brains, or do we feel it in our, in our hearts, in our trunk? It seems to me if the brain was the seat of consciousness, we wouldn't get heart sick when we lost somebody. We'd get brain sick.
Right.
And it seems like there's a direct path to the heart. So, I just can't buy the brain. And take aside, even if you don't believe that one neurosurgeon who was supposedly brain dead for so long and was having a conscious experience in a different reality till he came out of his coma. He's been kind of, they've kind of said he was lying. I don't see why he would. I mean, he's a rich brain surgeon. What's he got to gain, really? But anyway, his consciousness was not residing within a shut down brain.
Right. Well, here's an interesting thing. We're talking about the heart, and as you know, I've had some issues with hemoglobin in the past year, and Paul Hamden, in the Zayton book that he channeled, the Zayton is telling him that there is a direct connection between hemoglobin and oxygenation of the brain and the body, and the ability of consciousness to shift from the physical to the etheric. So, for example, when oxygenation of the brain goes down, hemoglobin goes down, either one, you're going to get the same thing. If your hemoglobin goes down, your oxygenation is going to be crap. You're going to be able to leave your body more easily without that oxygenation. But a lot of people will use hypoxic breathing. So holotropic breath work is where you start to hyperventilate. And does that not make your oxygen in your brain go down?
If you hyperventilate?
Yeah, or breathe in a certain way that you end up getting. Let's see. Now that would make the oxygen go up because you're blowing off more CO2, so that's throwing off the acid-base balance. If you're just like that, you're not giving, it's oxygenation. Okay, look at free divers, the people that go hundreds of feet deep with no oxygen tanks, and they hold their breath for, I think the record now is like 9 minutes or something. Before they go down, they do that oxygenating their blood. Right. Okay. So
hemoglobin is the molecule that transports oxygen through the body. So if it drops, your oxygenation drops. Yeah.
So I've got it. I've had it. I'm out of here. I'm going to get rid of this oxygen. Then we switch it around to the other side. So anyway, Eric, we are coming to the end. I hate to tell you, buddy. You still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel! That was a fast 3 hours.
I know, and I think I got a little bit hypoxic myself there, or unhypoxic at the end there. I was on mute for a little bit. I'm sorry, guys. So that being said, if you want to be conscious in your body, breathe. Don't stop breathing. Breathe well. I guess we're all here learning something. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I think we're given that opportunity, but here again, free will offers us a choice. We're supposed to learn this life lesson, but we can, by dint of using our free will incorrectly, not learn it.
Right.
But that's a learning experience in its own right. So I think one way or the other, you learn something.
Well, we learned some stuff tonight. Thank you for listening to Cosmic Passport. This is Elizabeth Anglin. I've been here with Eric Marcum, the SOR Science Editor. Tomorrow night, Dave Scott will be back talking about UFOs over the United States with Jeff Tardis, I think. Sorry, I can't click on that link anymore. Jason Mathis and Dave will be back with UFOs over the USA tomorrow night on Spaced Out Radio. Next week, all of the week, Dave Scott will be on for Spaced Out Radio. Come Saturday, Dave Cruz will be back. in the studio. And then next Sunday, I will be back with Paul Simons and Paisley Town for Psychic Sunday. And we'll be talking about Hopi star migrations a little bit before that for an hour on Sunday night. Don't miss it. Good night. Y'all be good. We'll see you next week here on Cosmic Passport.
I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching.